Verse?
And the verse should be somewhere around 9 and 10, I believe.
Verse 8? Yeah.
The year of Jubilee?
Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement. Shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all the land. Was a loud trumpet, isn't it?
Yep.
And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall the 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, not gather the grapes in it of thy vineyard undressed. For it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the ground. In the year of the Jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession. What you have borrowed, you give it back to him. You've had it long enough. Oh. Yeah. According to the number of years after the Jubilee thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruit ye shall sell unto them, and so forth it goes. In our text tonight, in Luke chapter 4 again tonight, okay. Christ is a preacher. Christ is preaching. And in verse 19, he preaches at the acceptable year of the Lord, the year of atonement, and the year of Jubilee. An allusion to the Jubilee year, a year of universal release of persons and property. You also see it in Isaiah chapter 49, verses 8, and 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2. Christ, and it's in my notes in verse 20. I'll get to it in just a minute. Christ read the appointed lesson for the day, which happened to be the year of atonement, but not the whole of it. He had not come to proclaim the day of the vengeance of our God. The gospel is primarily a deliverance shadowed by the year of Jubilee, and it embraces the physical and social ills of man and their spiritual ills. What is the 50th year called in the Old Testament Jubilee? Jubilee, as I said, I read a few seconds ago, appears in the 25th and 27th chapter of Leviticus, Dorothy's favorite book.
I've got it here.
As part of a regulation, doubled the holiness code by scholars. The mandates considering Jubilee focus on the compulsory returning of land and property, including humans, to their original owners in somewhat of a national do-over. Everything you've borrowed, everything you've had, you return it to the proper owner. My father-in-law would have loved that. Because every time we borrowed something from him, we forgot to return it. The name Jubilee comes from the Latin version of the Hebrew word, which literally means ram.
Yep.
a blow of the shofar made of a ram's horn. I got a picture of it. I think do you have on your notes? Is there at the top of the page? Didn't color?
Yeah.
Okay. Announcing the Jubilee in Leviticus 25, verse 9. And Dorothy, don't you want to repent? Surely you've got to repent of not liking Leviticus.
I'm trying to.
Jubilee does not appear to have made it past the ruler's phrase. The Israelites didn't keep a whole lot of the rules that God set up. Outside of Leviticus, the only biblical reference to Jubilee is in Numbers chapter 36 and verse 4. There is no biblical story set during Jubilee, and there is no record of it being enforced. And what other biblical concepts have gone unintended? Why do this? They would say. Of all the laws, it remained neglected, apparently even during the era in which it was written. Jubilee would obviously greatly benefit the poor. It might also allow for new leaders to emerge and prevent old leaders from using their power primarily to maintain it and thus benefiting the entire society. You remember this morning when I was talking to you that God doesn't make any bad laws?
Amen.
God doesn't make any bad laws, and if the laws are kept, people are blessed. I guarantee you, every one of us sitting here can name at least 10 laws that we don't like. There's not a law that somebody isn't going to like. And specifically, the laws of God. When God makes a law, He makes it for our benefit. But it's apparently too few people believe in God's laws being correct. Jubilee, how else would a Jubilee benefit the whole society and not just the poor? Would it have benefited for those holding property? Jubilee is a reminder that the land, moreover, shall not be sold permanently. Leviticus chapter 25 and verse 23. For the land is mine, for you are but aliens and sojourners with me. And I think that's probably where we get the idea the land is God's.
Yeah.
We may be having it for a while, but it will belong to somebody later. The inexhaustibleness with which they are united in the words of Christ when He had His sermon suggests the profound mystery of body and spirit, mind and matter, environment and spiritual history. In these words that He set before us, we find a theology and a life, a doctrine and a practice. God, when Christ spoke, He spoke in a theology, what God believed. He gave us a sense of life. He gave us a doctrine, and He gave us a practice. And that the two are inseparable, passed now into His preaching. Notice number one, the substance of His preaching. The substance of His preaching. Without a doubt, we have here the key note in His entire teaching. it is the distinguishing characteristic of Christ's preaching that he cuts through with a sharp point and at once directly towards the center of his great deliverance system. He started with a quick point. He zeroed in exactly what he needed to say, and it planted his ministry upon him. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Verse 19, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovery of sight of the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. About 1500 BC, if a person of whatever reason became poor, they could give themselves up and become a slave. However, there was a provision that regardless of how many people were enslaved, they must be set free in the 50th year of Jubilee. Now let's take for instance that a person went into slavery because he didn't have any money in the 48th year.
Yep.
On the 50th year, he's supposed to be set free. Well, you can see why owners would not want to set that slave free after 2 years when they disobeyed God's rules. And the land that a family had sold off in hard times, time of famine, would never reverts back to the owner in the year of Jubilee. But before the year of Jubilee comes, such a person may feel they have lost all hope of a successful future. So you can see that there's hope. There was such a time when people of Israel were groaning under Babylonian captivity. They felt that there was no hope in them. But God had a plan for them. And God planned to take them back to the promised land. Their captivity was not forever. As I said this morning, God is a generous God. He set in motion a plan to give hope to those that were poor or in rough times. A person can go through similar experiences, for example, like Job. You may feel that you have lost a lot in life, or even lose everything. At such time, you must not give up, because there's hope for you and your loved ones. What kills people is a loss of hope. Even when they know that people have died, there's still hope. They say, give people hope. And there is hope in you. Jesus came to die for us when there was no hope in man. He brought us the gift of salvation, so that anyone who believes in Him will receive grace that will deliver him from sin. Just as God fulfilled His promise, His part of bringing the Israelites out of captivity, out of bondage to the promised land, God has made provision for you and me today to bring us out of bondage, of sin, sickness, and all that is bad, into the glorious kingdom of peace, joy, and happiness. Now, the particular feature of this quote is from Isaiah chapter 61.